Welcome to Royal Secrets. In the heart of Copenhagen, where royal traditions run deep and every public appearance is steeped in symbolism, a single accessory has ignited a storm of whispers across Denmark. Queen Mary, the poised and ever-elegant consort of King Frederik X, stepped into the spotlight not with grand speeches or bold declarations, but with a subtle gleam on her chest. A brooch, not just any brooch, but a relic laced with scandal, sorrow, and resilience. A tribute to a royal woman whose name still sends shivers down palace corridors, Countess Danner. Why would Queen Mary, the darling of modern Danish monarchy, choose to wear a jewel so charged with controversy? And why now? The moment was deliberate, it was cinematic, and for those who know Denmark's royal history, it was nothing short of revolutionary. This is not just the story of a beautiful accessory, it's a story about power, love, exile, redemption, and a queen reclaiming a silenced woman's legacy. This is the untold story behind the brooch that turned heads, and the royal woman whose memory it resurrected. A queen's fashion with a message. Queen Mary of Denmark has long been celebrated for her impeccable style. Whether walking alongside heads of state or celebrating national holidays, she carries herself with grace that effortlessly blends modern flair and regal tradition. But fashion watchers and royal historians alike knew this latest appearance was different. At a recent event marking the celebration of social reform and women's rights in Denmark, Queen Mary appeared in a deep navy coat dress, a respectful nod to Denmark's historic austerity. But what truly captured the nation's attention was pinned near her left shoulder, a Victorian-era brooch of gold and pearls, shaped like a blooming flower. It had belonged to none other than Countess Danner, perhaps the most divisive woman to ever reside within the walls of the Danish court. For the royal family, whose public image rests delicately on a foundation of dignity and restraint, Countess Danner remains a ghost in the ancestral halls. Her story, often censored, often softened, is one of scandal and defiance. She was not born noble. She was not born royal. She was born poor, illegitimate, and female in a world that saw all three as curses. So why would Queen Mary, royalty by marriage, and now queen by ascension, choose this moment to honor her? The answer, as we'll uncover, lies not only in the brooch's craftsmanship, but in the life of the woman who once wore it, and in Queen Mary's subtle revolution. Countess Danner, the royal rebel. To understand the full weight of Queen Mary's tribute, we must journey back nearly 2 centuries. Louise Rasmussen was born in 1815 to a laundress in Copenhagen. Her early years were shaped by poverty, but even as a child, she possessed an extraordinary beauty and an even more extraordinary will. She pursued a career in ballet and later became a successful actress under the stage name, M.L. Danner. But it was her relationship with King Frederik VII, then Crown Prince, that catapulted her into infamy. Louise became the king's mistress, and despite immense political and social pressure, he married her in 1850. The scandal was immediate. The Danish aristocracy recoiled. Parliament was furious. She was not allowed to be queen. Instead, she was given the title Countess of Danner, a polite but firm slap in the face. To many, she was an opportunist, a social climber, a commoner who corrupted the purity of monarchy. To others, especially the poor and voiceless women of Denmark, she was a beacon of resilience and empowerment. It was Countess Danner who used her controversial position to champion social causes. She founded shelters for women. She donated generously to causes that the nobility ignored. She fought, not just for her place in royal history, but for the futures of women who would never be invited into royal halls. And yet, for decades after her death, she was all but erased. Until now, Queen Mary's silent revolution. By wearing Countess Danner's brooch, Queen Mary made a powerful statement, one that transcends mere symbolism. Mary, too, was not born royal. An Australian commoner before marrying Crown Prince Frederik, she has lived under the same gaze that once scrutinized Countess Danner, though in a more modern and forgiving era. Her every word, gesture, and outfit is carefully analyzed, judged, and interpreted. Yet, unlike Countess Danner, Queen Mary has been embraced by the public and gradually by the establishment. She has used her position to advocate for mental health, gender equality, and social inclusion, causes strikingly similar to those championed by Danner over a century ago. By reviving Danner's memory, Queen Mary does more than pay homage to a controversial predecessor. She reclaims her legacy. She offers her dignity. And perhaps most importantly, she signals a new kind of monarchy, one that remembers not just the victors and the nobles, but the rebels and the wronged. The brooch. A jewel with a journey. The brooch itself has its own fascinating story. Historical archives trace it back to the mid-19th century, likely gifted to Louise Rasmussen after her marriage to Frederik VII. It is believed to have been part of her personal collection, not part of the crown jewels, making it a deeply personal item rather than a state treasure. After her death in 1874, many of Danner's belongings were sequestered away, distributed quietly to family members or archived without ceremony. The brooch eventually found its way into the private royal collection but was never worn publicly, until now. Royal insiders suggest that Queen Mary personally requested the piece. Whether this was part of a larger plan to subtly rehabilitate Danner's legacy or a personal gesture of solidarity is unclear. But what is certain is that this was no accident. In royal fashion, nothing is accidental. Public reaction. Divided, but fascinated Danish media exploded within hours of the Queen's appearance. Headlines ranged from, "A touch of rebellion," to, "The Queen Who Dares." Royal watchers took to social media in droves, analyzing the brooch and debating its implications. Some applauded Queen Mary force confronting Denmark's hidden royal history head-on. They praised her as a progressive monarch unafraid to challenge the sanitized image of the crown. Others were less impressed. Conservative commentators accused her of resurrecting a figure best left buried, arguing that Countess Danner's past undermined the integrity of the monarchy. But even critics admitted one thing. Queen Mary had captured the nation's attention, and perhaps even redefined royal storytelling for the 21st century. As the brooch gleamed under camera flashes and television lights, it seemed to whisper a forbidden story, a tale long tucked away in the shadows of royal archives. But for Queen Mary to bring that whisper back into the national conversation was not merely a fashion statement. It was a reckoning. The palace remained silent, of course. There was no official commentary about the brooch or the intent behind it. But the absence of words spoke volumes. And behind closed doors, among palace staff and royal historians, the atmosphere buzzed with quiet astonishment. Denmark's most unwanted royal. To understand the gravity of Queen Mary's gesture, we must understand just how deeply Countess Danner was resented by the 19th century establishment. Louise Rasmussen didn't just marry a king, she broke a centuries-old code of royal conduct. In an age when monarchs were expected to marry for alliance, lineage, and prestige, Frederik VII's choice to wed a woman of working-class origins, an actress, no less, was a cultural earthquake. The elite never forgave her. Court ladies refused to acknowledge her. Diplomats skirted events where she was present. Rumors swirled of her manipulating the king, of swaying political decisions from behind a curtain of scandal. Even after her death, portraits of her were quietly taken down. Her name was omitted from certain royal records, and the title she bore, Countess of Danner, was often spoken with more derision than respect. And yet, Danner endured. She left behind more than just a controversial marriage. She left behind a foundation. The Dannerhuset, a shelter for abused women that still exists today, nearly 150 years later. She left behind money for orphaned girls. She donated to poorhouses. She invested in the future of Denmark's marginalized long before women's suffrage or civil rights were part of political discourse. She may have been unwelcome at court, but she carved her legacy into the soul of the nation. And now, Queen Mary, perhaps the only person who truly understands what it means to marry into such scrutiny, has reached across history to honor her. Queen Mary's balancing act. Queen Mary didn't make this decision lightly. As Denmark's first Australian-born queen, she has walked a tightrope between tradition and transformation from the moment she entered Amalienborg Palace. It's easy to forget just how much pressure she faced early in her royal life. Her accent, her wardrobe, even her etiquette were dissected by a watchful press and critical aristocracy. But over 2 decades, she has not only survived the scrutiny, she has flourished. And with her ascension to queen consort, Mary has embraced a bolder public persona. She is no longer just the king's wife, she is a figure of leadership, influence, and quiet power. Wearing Countess Danner's brooch is her latest and perhaps most personal message yet, that modern monarchy must not erase the difficult parts of its past. It must embrace them. A royal pattern. Fashion is diplomacy. This is not the first time Queen Mary has used jewelry and clothing to send subtle messages. Fashion, in royal circles, is never just fashion. Every brooch, every fabric, every designer is selected with intent. When Queen Mary visits Greenland, she often wears pieces crafted by local Inuit artisans, a gesture of cultural respect. When she attended events on women's rights, she wore suffragette-inspired colors of purple and white. Even the cut of her suits, strong shoulders, minimalist lines, reflect her commitment to modern feminism. So it's no surprise that her choice of a brooch tied to one of Denmark's most silenced women has sparked such intense reaction. In Mary's world, brooches are not just adornments, they are historical essays. And this one, it reads like a love letter to rebellion. What this means for the monarchy. Queen Mary isn't just rewriting history, she's teaching the next generation how to live within it. Princess Isabella, the couple's daughter and Denmark's future queen if Christian ascends without heirs, has grown up watching her mother redefine what royalty can be. By choosing to honor Countess Danner, Mary isn't just sending a message to Denmark's aristocracy, she's sending a message to her own children. It says, "You are not defined by titles. You are not bound by past expectations. Use your power for good, and never be afraid to honor those who came before you, even when others won't." This is legacy building in real time, and it might be the most powerful lesson a royal mother can give. The Danish people, divided yet intrigued. On the streets of Copenhagen and in online forums across Denmark, Queen Mary's gesture has sparked impassioned debate. Some call it unnecessary provocation. Others praise her bravery. In interviews conducted by local news outlets, older Danes expressed caution. Danner was always a complicated figure, said one woman outside Christiansborg Palace. "I'm not sure she deserves to be honored so openly. But perhaps the Queen sees something we don't." Younger voices, however, told a different story. "She was a feminist before feminism," said a 24-year-old history student. "Queen Mary wearing that brooch, that's revolutionary. That's Queen energy." The Danish media, for its part, has found itself treading carefully. Long protective of the royal family's public image, they have covered the story with cautious admiration. Even critics are noting the surge in positive attention surrounding Queen Mary, especially among younger demographics who typically show less interest in royalty. The brooch becomes an icon. Within 48 hours of Queen Mary's appearance, replicas of the Danner brooch began trending on Danish fashion websites. Small boutiques offered modern reinterpretations, while jewelry historians began publishing articles dissecting the original's design. The Royal House Museum, which until recently kept many of Countess Danner's personal items in archival obscurity, announced it would soon feature a "Legacy of Louise Rasmussen" exhibit, including the original brooch if permitted. What was once a forgotten trinket is now a national talking point. What was once a scandal is now a symbol. And Queen Mary has become its curator. A queen with global impact. It wasn't just Denmark that noticed. International royal watchers from Britain to Australia picked up the story. British tabloids, always eager for royal controversy, hailed Queen Mary's gutsy gesture. Fashion magazines from Paris to Sydney featured side-by-side comparisons of Queen Mary and Countess Danner, drawing visual and ideological parallels between the two. Even academic circles weighed in. A professor of modern monarchy studies in Oslo tweeted, "Queen Mary just did more for historical reconciliation in one outfit than some royals do in a decade." And while Buckingham Palace, Stockholm's royal court, and other monarchies remain silent publicly, insiders have reportedly taken note. One European courtier was quoted anonymously saying, "It was bold. We would never do that. But perhaps we should." Reactions from the palace, carefully measured. Behind the polished gates of Amalienborg, there has been no official reaction from King Frederik X or the Danish royal household. Yet court insiders describe the move as Queen Mary's own initiative, approved but not promoted by the palace. One source stated, "She knew exactly what she was doing. And she knew what it would mean." King Frederik, often seen as more traditional than his wife, has reportedly expressed quiet support, though he has not made any public statement on the matter. It's a carefully choreographed dance. Acknowledge the gesture without igniting full-blown controversy. Allow the Queen to lead without formally changing royal protocol. But as one staff member said, the Queen doesn't need permission to honor the past. She is the present. Thanks for and please don't forget to subscribe.